What was it that made you want to make this film? Was it about drawing attention to people who you felt should be better known? Was it just about expressing your love for this passion that you've had all these years?
Expressing my gratitude towards people who inspire my life, maybe saved me when I was young, having poor health. I mean, the film, a lot of film gave me hope. Yes, saying thank you to some people who really made my life better, made me love my country much more than the politician, much more. I mean, I've loved France because of Renoir, because of Prévert, because of all those, because of Maurice Jaubert, those composers. All of that. I mean, and the desire to tell stories.
I pride myself on having seen a lot of films over the years, but you know, this movie is incredibly illuminating, but it's also very, very moving. It is a. Did you always intend it to be such a personal film?
For years, once the BBC asked me many years ago to do a film about the story of the French cinema, and I refused because I could not see how I would manage that. In one, they were giving me 1 hour. They were completely unconscious, and I don't know how to tell. I mean, it started on that year. I can. That I do not know. I'm not an historian of cinema. I'm not a critic. I'm not a teacher. I am a filmmaker, and I can tell story that I've lived, that been important in my life. But it's when I knew that I had to do the film. Not I should avoid doing the history of the French cinema, but to do my vision. I mean, a little bit, because there is 8 more hours. I mean, and I would have needed 10, in fact, to speak about all the people which I admire and that I love, which, again, some of them I want to rehabilitate because they had been forgotten or underrated. And I have a few films there. I mean, to Jean Sacha, the film with Eddie Constantine, as we say in France, This Man is Dangerous, is a marvelous film. And meeting the director, I discovered that he was the editor of Othello for Orson Welles. And he told me a lot of stories about the first cut of Othello, which he did, which was completely different from the film we are seeing. And so, and he had been the editor of Max Ophuls, Werther, some films before the war. So meeting somebody like that, that was, I wanted to talk about him. I said, people always think that the first people who were film critic and became director were the new wave. That was not true. Sacha was a film critic, Gréville was a film critic, Pierre Chenal was a film critic. In early 30s, they were writing about films. I mean, Gréville was writing great article about Stroheim, about John Crawford, about Norma Talmadge. He was in love with Norma Talmadge, and he said the cinema should be called Cinorma and not cinema because of Norma Talmadge.
You are not just dealing with directors. You deal with writers. You deal with actors. You deal with composers.
But this is not polemical. This is reality.
But exactly. But did you see it as a slight something of a response to the prevailing?
No, I saw that the fact that people were ignoring sometimes screenwriters, which was stupid, and so, mostly the film critic and film historian are ignoring composers. I mean, you can read a lot of book about the French cinema. There is barely a mention of Maurice Jaubert, of Cosma, of those people. Nobody is studying the relationship between the directors and the music. Nobody is, you can read a lot of books about Jean Vigo. Nobody tells you how Jaubert met Vigo, because I think the music of Maurice Jaubert for La Talente is the best essay ever written on the film. This is the best critique of the film, the music, because it gets the art of the emotion of the film. You have that. So I think they are the unsung heroes, the composers, and especially that in France, a lot of them had the special relationship with the directors. So it tells a lot about the sensitivity also of the directors, because contrary to the American cinema, the directors, Clair, Duvivier, Renoir, were choosing their composer. They were working with them. Duvivier had a very, very close relationship with all his composers. On Golgotha, one of his films, the first card reads a film by Julien Duvivier, music by Jacques Ibert. First card, the composer is at the beginning of the title. So the respect they had for music, those people. And that I wanted to express that.
One thing that I was very touched by when I watched the film was that I had this feeling that you would lead up to ending with Melville and Sauté. Melville is quite well known here, and the films have been doing very well, but Sauté is nowhere near as well known as he should be. Mm-hmm. Were you always determined to finish with Sauté?
Yeah, I wanted to finish by Sauté because Sauté is the exact equivalent of Becker. There are two directors who are very much alike. They have the same approach, the same intelligence, the same, and both of them were underrated. And Sauté loved Becker. They both were companions of the Communist Party. They both were interested by social issues. Sauté was one of the two directors with René who signed, and Truffaut, who signed the manifesto of the 121 supporting the rebellion in Algeria, which was making them guilty in front of the court. So I wanted to finish that. And Becker, I never met him, and this is my greatest regret. I was too young he died too soon. He died so early. He was so young when he died, so young. So I wanted to finish with Sauté. And Sauté and Melville, because they were my two first godfathers. They were the two person who made me work at the beginning when I was young.
And Melville could be quite difficult sometimes.
Working with him was a nightmare. Let's put it that way. That's all. It was a nightmare. It was. I will never. I had the impression every morning that I was going to the dentist, or to a class of mathematics. I was very bad at math, so I had the same impression. And I was thinking, is that what you should feel when you are getting on a film set? To feel that you are going to the dentist, and I was working on one of the films I admire most of Melville, which was Léon Morin-Prêtre, which is film never very, I think, not very often quoted. I think it's a masterpiece, and it's one of the rare films who talk about the ambiguity of the religion, the conversion. It's a very, and it was interesting to see a Jew, Gaullist, there isn't, dealing with a woman who was a communist atheist, and to see how, and he managed that, I think, in a great way. And it's a wonderful evocation of the occupation, just through the eye of woman. I think it's very, it's a fascinating film. Very deep, very deep.
What, finally, do you think has made French cinema so great?
I mean, we should write books to answer. It's impossible to answer a question. I would say the personality of the filmmakers, the fact that many of them had to fight against, but that it's true of many cinemas. Henri Janson said that the French cinema created a lot of masterpieces in spite of the dictatorship of the money, in spite of censorship. But I mean that it can be true of the British cinema, the Italian cinema, the American cinema. There was something, I think, in the French cinema where very early the directors were the instigator of their film, the creator of their film, and where that. But again, you have many cases in America where Ford, but Ford inside of studio was not always free. Renoir had a moment of total freedom. Carnet, the 4 films, all the films he wrote with Prévert, Carnet was inside a system and he was fighting against the system, the producer, but he was imposing. I mean, the film seems to be made without any fear, and that's a great thing in some of the masterpieces of the absence of fear. Also, among some of the greatest filmmakers, a distrust, or no, not a distrust, yes, distrust for the plot, at least for the tyranny of the plot. The characters should be more interesting than the plot. I mean, you have that at Becker, you have that Sauté, you have that Renoir, Vigo. You can take a lot, of course, not in a film with Eddie Constantine. I mean, the plot had to exist because although that there are some great things in terms of plot. I mean, the fact that the guy says to an American, "Don't speak English, people do not like subtitles." I mean, this is that many years before Woody Allen or people like that. I mean, this is a wonderful private joke about movies. I mean, that inside the film. It's why I love the film of Eddie Constantine, because you were finding things like that. So I said, yes, the relationship with the plot.